So I'm starting with my pattern paper, and you can see I've gone ahead to mark out my bust point line, my nipple point line, my under bust point, my half blouse, and the hem. The top to the bottom of this pattern paper is 22 inches. So the hem, I'm going to mark my hip line there. So I've gone ahead to mark my shoulder point at 8.5 inches. For the neckline, you can do whatever you want to do there, okay? So you are going to mark your own shoulder point too. Don't come and mark mine. So now let's just kickstart the tutorial. At my shoulder point, I came down by half an inch to shape my shoulder slant. Okay, so after coming down by half an inch, the next thing I went ahead to do, the distance between these 2 points is 8 inches. So half of that distance is 4 inches. So I marked 4 and I came in by half an inch. Okay. So after marking 4 and coming in by half an inch, I connected it. I connected that, half an inch point to my shoulder point. And after doing this, from the middle, I marked circumference of my bust divided by 4. Mine is 9.5. You are going to mark yours. Okay, so after marking circumference of my bust divided by 4, I went ahead to insert my armhole curve. Okay, so very simple, very straightforward. This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I went ahead to extend my shoulder slant line. You want to make sure you do this. Very, 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 very important. Okay, so I extended my shoulder slant line. Now, from the top, I marked my chest line at 5 inches. Okay, so I marked my chest line at 5 inches. And I went ahead to extend the chest line just like we did for the shoulder line. Okay, so at my nipple point, I marked my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, and I just slanted my ruler downwards, and I drew a slanted line. And at my chest line, I marked 5 inches. Okay, do you guys understand? So at my under bust point, I marked 1 inch on both sides. So after marking 1 inch on both sides at my under bust point, at the hem, I also marked 1 inch on both sides. Very important, because even if the line is slanted, you still have to keep that bustier contouring equal. Okay, so after marking 1 inch at my under bust point and at the hem, I connected everything together. Then I connected my under bust point to my nipple point with a triangular line. You guys, if I sound stuffy, I have a flu. Okay, so now at my chest line, I marked half an inch on both sides. Okay, this is like how we draft a bustier, but with a slant. Okay, so I marked half an inch on both sides and I connected it back to my nipple point. Okay, so this is where we are now, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we have going on here. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was to just place my ruler there and extend that line. I kept my hand straight, okay, and I extended the line to my shoulder slant. Okay, so this is what we have here. So now at my shoulder line, what I went ahead to do was to mark 1 inch on both sides. Okay, so I marked 1 inch on both sides and I connected it to my chest line. If you don't want to do this, you can just use your eye and eyeball it. Okay, so now after marking 1 inch on both sides, I connected it to my chest line. This is what we have here. So the next thing I went ahead to do was to verify my bust measurement again. And after doing this, I went ahead to mark circumference of my under bust divided by 4, which is 8 inches. I marked circumference of my waist divided by 4, which is 8 inches. And you see the distance between those 2 points. I added it back because you guys know that we are going to cut it out. So we need this pattern to be very accurate. So I did same thing at my waist, at my half blouse as well, which is my waistline. And at the chest line as well, I went ahead to add it back to the circumference of my bust. Okay, not at the chest line, at the bust point line. Okay, so now at the hem, I marked circumference of my hips divided by 4, and the distance between those 2 points, I also added it back to my hips measurement. Okay, so now after doing all this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect all my markings together. For me, because of the kind of body shape I have, my front pattern is not always shapy, but the back is shapy. Okay, so this is what we have here for the front pattern. Now the next thing I went ahead to do, you see the distance between those 2 points at my chest line, I added it back to that chest line we extended. Okay, and I did same thing at my shoulders line. The distance between those 2 points, I added it back. Okay, because you guys know we're going to cut it out, so we need everything to be accurate. So the next thing I went ahead to do now was to connect my shoulder slant to my chest line. Okay, and I connected my chest line to my bust measurement. Okay, so this is what we have here now. So this is what the pattern is looking like. Very simple, very straightforward. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was to add 1 inch sewing allowance, 1 inch seam allowance to the pattern. So which is what I went ahead to do here. I added 1 inch at my bust point, at my under bust point, at my waist point, and at the hip point. That's the hem. Okay, so after doing all this, I went ahead to connect all my markings together. So for the hem, you can see I kept this one slanted, but you can make yours curvy if you want. That's this particular line I'm drawing. Okay, so this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. So now we need to step down the side of this overbust corset, and from my nipple point I mark 1.5 inch. Okay, I marked 1.5 inch, and at that point I came down by 1.5 inch. Okay, I came down by 1.5 inch. So after coming down by 1.5 inch, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect it with my ruler. Now this is just like drawing a bust dart. Some people take half an inch on both sides, but me, I don't have strength for that half an inch on both sides. So I just took 1 inch, and I'll show you how I stepped it down. Okay, so this is what we have here at the moment. This is what we have going on, ladies and gentlemen. So now the next I went ahead to do, you can go ahead to contour, also like contour the sides of your bust, but me, I was just marking a line to show that I'm going to put like a bone channel there, a boning channel there. But you can go ahead to contour yours if you want. Me, I don't really care for that. Okay, so after drawing the line, the next thing I went ahead to do was at the side I went up by 1.5 inch because I want the bottom of the corset to be shapy. Okay, so now I connected my 1.5 inch markings together, then I got my armhole ruler and I just curved it into the rest part of the pattern. Now you see that line I drew for boning channel, you can skip drawing it at this point. I will show you the point where you should draw it to avoid a lot of headache. Okay, so this is what we have going on here, ladies and gentlemen. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was from the top I came down by 6.5 inches. Okay, just walk with me. I mean, that's what they used to say, walk with me. I came down by 6.5 inches. So after coming down by 6.5 inches, I folded my pattern. Okay, you want to make sure that all the lines are well aligned and folded in. So I folded my pattern, and the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect that 6.5 inch mark outwards. You see that extension we did outside the main armhole, you're going to connect it there. So if you want it very high, go ahead. If you want it not very low, go ahead. You understand? So I connected it. This is the overbust we are talking about. This is the overbust. Okay, so now after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut the pattern a little bit. Okay, because there are some things I want to do. Okay, so I went ahead to cut the pattern a little bit, then I opened here up. Okay, so at this point I didn't open it up enough, but you see what happened. So I went ahead, you see that thing we marked for the dart, right? I just went ahead to fold it inside because at this point it's not needed outside anymore. You can cut it out, you mustn't fold it, you can just cut it out. I don't even know why I didn't cut it out. Okay, so I went ahead to fold it inside. Now after folding it, I made sure that my lines met and everything was good and fine. So as I wanted to fold this bust dart, I realized that the cutting I did was not enough. So I went ahead to cut it further. Okay, so now after cutting it more, I went ahead to easily fold the bust dart. Okay, so now after folding the bust dart, ladies and gentlemen, I went ahead to secure my office pins. But there you can see that the line, that's my seam allowance line, is no longer accurate. So I just went ahead to use my ruler to straighten it again, because you guys know that the fold will affect, you know, something there in the pattern. So you want to make sure you fold it again. And for that boning channel, this is the best time to put that boning channel line. Okay. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was to use my sellotape to hold down the breast dart, and I just went ahead to cut out the rest part of the pattern. Okay, I forgot to use my marker to highlight it like I always do for you guys. Forgive me. Okay, forgive me. So I just went ahead to cut out my bustier markings. Then I went ahead to cut out my overbust shaping, and I went ahead to cut the hem, the curvy hem. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how to draft the front part of an overbust corset. Very simple, very straightforward. Okay, so this is what we have here. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was to tag it center front. I always mistake when I want to tag center front, I'm tagging center back or side back. You can see I tagged it side back. I was trying to tag it side back here, but anyway, it's time to draft the back pattern. Okay, so now for the back pattern, see, you guys, I know you are seeing plenty funny colors. I don't know, my baby messed up with and played around with my machine oil. Okay, so now from the top, remember that by the side we stepped it down by 1.5 inch, which means the bust point now is at 9.5 inches, no longer 8 inches. So from the top, I just went ahead to mark 9.5 inches, which is 9.5 inches. Okay, now so after marking 9.5 inches, the next thing I went ahead to do was to draw a straight line to connect everything together. So now after drawing a straight line to connect everything together, I went ahead to mark my under bust point and my half blouse point. So I marked my under bust point at 13.5 inches and I marked my half blouse point at 16 inches, and the hem still remains the hem. From the middle, I marked 4 inches at the top, and at the hem I marked 3 inches because I wanted to give it a slant, but you can just mark your 4 inches. You don't have to give it a slant like Adauju. Okay, after marking it, I was like, why did I even give it a slant? But anyway, the next tutorial I will not give it a slant. Okay, so at the top 4 inches, at the bottom 3 inches to give it a slight slant. You can keep yours straight if you want. Then I connected my markings together. So after connecting my markings together, this is what we have here. Now at my under bust point, I took half an inch on both sides. Okay, I took half an inch on both sides. Now after taking half an inch on both sides, the next I went ahead to do was at the bottom, at the hem, I took 1 millimeter, which is half of a cm on both sides. And I connected this half a cm, which is 1 millimeter, to my under bust point. Okay, and at the top, I also took half a cm on both sides. Okay, so half a cm is 1 millimeter, in case you are confused. So I took half a cm on both sides as well, and I just went ahead to draw what my dart line looks like here. Okay, so this is what we have here for the dart contouring at the back, like you guys like to say. So at the top, I marked circumference of my bust divided by 4, which is 9.5 inches. Circumference of my under bust divided by 4, which is 8 inches. I marked 8 inches, and that portion we are going to cut out, I added the distance between those 2 points back to my measurement. I marked circumference of my waist divided by 4, which is 8 inches. I also took the distance between those 2 points and added it back. And so after at the hem, I marked circumference of my hips divided by 4, okay, which is 11 inches. I also took the distance between those 2 points and added it back. Remember to use your own measurement. Don't come and be asking me, why did you mark 9? It is my measurement. You hear me? So now after all these markings, the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect all my markings together, my bust point to my under bust point to my waist to my hips. Okay, I also went ahead to add 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I went ahead to add 1 inch seam allowance and I connected everything together. You guys, you know I'm always connecting everything together. You can choose not to connect your own together, then you will not see I am a tanga. Okay, now so at that top, because at the top I marked 2 inches. And at the bottom, I marked 1 inch. This is because I want to put lacing. You guys know that for corset, I'm always a zip girl. But I'm like, let me just give you guys some lacing today. Okay? So I marked 2 inches at the top, 1 inch below, and I just slanted it in. Now, I'm shading this out because I want you guys to know that this is not going to be part of the pattern. Okay? So now, this is what we have here. I went ahead to highlight it with my marker. And from the hem, I went up by 1.5 inch. I also did same thing at the allowance, and I connected everything with a straight line. So now after connecting it with a straight line, I used my armhole ruler to curve it into the rest part of the pattern. Okay, so now after doing this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, for the back pattern. I went ahead to tag it. You see now, I made another mistake. I think I was tagging it side back instead of center back, then side back. I don't know why I'm always confusing this thing. You guys should pray for me. I also went ahead to indicate my line where I want my boning channel. You can skip this. You can do this on the fabric directly itself. So this is what the back pattern looks like. Then I went ahead to cut it out. Okay. So that part, shaded part, is not needed. This is the main back pattern. Okay. So this is it in a better view. This is the front and the back pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how to draft an overbust corset pattern. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. If you're watching from YouTube, make sure you like, make sure you share. If you're watching from Facebook, make sure you follow, make sure you share, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.